cargo.
What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. I'm here with my man David FOGEL from the Bothan Network. He's also an Orlando local to us here at TwoToBase. David, how you doing today?
Hello, internets. I'm doing pretty good today. Still riding high off the PQ win. Feeling good about that. Looking forward to Worlds.
Yeah, no, it was a great event. I'm very excited that you were able to take the win with a deck that some people might have said was on a decline or maybe just wasn't favorited right now into a lot of the decks, but you went against the grain. You went with what you know. Today on the video, we'll talk a little bit about your matchups, if you're cool with sharing that, and then maybe go through the deck list a little bit. How's that sound?
Yeah, happy to talk about the PQ in general and my matchups of the day and my philosophy for that particular day. As everybody knows, when you're going into any particular tournament, you're playing it to whatever meta you expect, so decks change from week to week. Mm-hmm. So I definitely had a plan going in.
Yeah, no, it feels good with the meta pretty wide, with some sort of standard to a certain degree, but it's really nice to see the variations of all the decks that people have been bringing out to the tournaments and locals too. I'm excited for the next set as well. Well, why don't we get right into the video? So I've got your deck list pulled up on the screen. Why don't we go through some of your list, and then we could talk about matchups from the event.
Oh, sure.
Awesome.
So what do you want to know about this list? It's definitely unique to me. I don't know anybody who's running this particular flavor of QUINLAN right now, so I'm sure there's questions.
Yeah, so pretty somewhat standard. I do see the fireballs in here, which I think is really nice. You know, being able to just ambush regardless of it surviving. I think the goal is just to get some removal in the space there. Yeah, I like the disabling Fang fighters. It's probably a good pick right now with Vader palette being popular. And right now, actually, Boba Datavolt's been popping up as well, too. So that's interesting to see in the list as a main board. But what do you think? What do you think stands out from your list versus some of the other lists that have been floating around?
Well, I'd have to say the number one thing is some QUINLANs recently have moved off of Poe, and I absolutely love Poe. I love doing what I call Poe math, which is ridiculous amounts of damage out of nowhere. I am on Fireball main and Disabling Fang main. I think Disabling Fang is probably generally main right now, just because you have to worry about things like Chewbacca, Vader, Leader, Flip, those types of decks. You know, the piloting is a part of the meta right now, and there are some other key upgrades out there. So the Fang is just out there to eliminate that particular problem. Mm-hmm. Coming from the Bothan Invitational, I was very concerned about space aggro decks because it was a big weak point for QUINLAN at that point in time. A lot of decks were just running like 3 Falcons, and that was pretty much it. And in a Django meta, that was fine. But in a post-Django world, with the advent of, you know, pilot decks and Vader for yellow becoming a thing, I wanted to be ready. Mm-hmm. And that's where the Fireball kind of came in, doing some local testing into decks like a Wedge deck or a Vader 4. They have a lot of like 1 strength, you know, spam the board units. And Fireball kind of excels in this particular deck of letting me come out there and kill those and having the Fireball stick around another turn or two to clear those early space units without using my Tarkin Town or my pings. Because they're going to be 1 cost. I don't run 1 cost, so I don't have an immediate way to ping them out there. And just trying to survive to my flip turn, where versus something like a Vader 4 with the 1 health token units they put out there, suddenly my pings come alive and I start, you know, taking over the space lane. So having that aggressive strategy into space lane is to remove those problems of, you know, Chewbacca landing on something. If there's nothing there to put him on, it can't go on there. Luke or Vader flip pilots, they can't land on something. I'm forced them to the ground where I want to play. So that's kind of the idea behind the Fireball, is to give me that early advantage and Disabling Fang to keep it so I can focus where I want to be on ground. I do have a lot of space in this deck in comparison to others, but I think just because space is an arena that we need to play in now, we can't ignore it, and I'm there to fight.
Yeah,
My other love card is X34 Land Speeder. I don't see a lot of it, but it helps me to aggro matchups early on, give me again that capacity to perhaps save that Tarkin Town for a turn 3 or turn 4 play, or a post ECL something on Sabine.
right.
So if I can clear those early units with that ambush, it helps me a lot.
It's really high. I love that card right now because, if you're playing it on opening turn, if they play like a Sabine unit, you get to kill her that turn and not have to use the Target Town, which is really cool.
Yeah, or an L3. It gets through
Mhm.
those 2/2 shielded units like a Krennic, L3, anything that fits in that realm that lets
Smuggler.
me actually get the kill. Yeah. And I
Uh,
can survive going to the next turn too.
yeah, really cool. Most of it's standard. I see you've got like the Force Throw, Sparks, and the Ahsoka for the hand hate, and then no Cham in here. So you've got the K2s in the main board, but no Cham. So you're not really worried about, ramping with them.
Not really. The only matchup that I find that I'm super excited to run Cham is probably actually two matchups. Would be like a Palp or a Kira.
Hmm.
And outside of that, I'm doing this on my turn 4 play, and every other ramp deck, I don't really care that much about accelerating my flip turn, because that's all I'm going to get out of it. On that 4 resource turn, they go up to 5, I go there, I get 5, now I get to flip QUINLAN, which is strong. I mean, getting a leader out early is always strong,
Oh yeah.
but versus Kira or Palp, accelerating and keeping on pace is important. Versus everybody else, I'd rather just do my thing. I'd rather Ahsoka, I'd rather K2 that turn, or Ezra with a force throw, something like that. Get the Disabling Fang out there if I have to, go off curve, rather than putting a Cham out there, or even double 2 drop. Put a Green Squadron and a Sabine out there, whatever's in my hand at the time. If I'm stuck playing a Cham, sure, I get a 5/4 unit and flip my leader, which is not a weak turn, but I'm also off of my goal. I'm not following my strategy. I'm kind of playing into theirs of, now I'm on pace, but now what? If I'm going to Kira, I have no other answer. I've put stuff on the board, they flip, now everything's damaged on my end. They're going to OB and evaporate everything I did. So it's like, I want to kind of chase, but it's like not the strongest play I can do.
Right on.
So yeah,
Yeah.
no Cham for me. It doesn't really fit with what I'm trying to do.
Love the Gorilla Soldier. I think that card is almost like a must include right now in this deck. Personally, I just think it's very good. Um, Interesting to mainboard
Yeah.
the Waylay. Um,
Oh, if anything, I probably should have 3. There's some people
oh,
I know who are like, if you're running yellow in hero, not necessarily hero, but if you're running yellow,
mhm.
you're not running 3 Waylay. What are you doing? It's such a powerful card.
Yep. Right now, really good as well. And then you've got the 2 Han Solo units in the mainboard too. I love that.
Yeah, that's kind of, I mean, it gets a little bit of a get out of jail free later in the game. It's very important in the mirror. And it's not even just for what he does. Having a 7 cost enables me to do things with QUINLAN to ping later in the game, to where I can take out units that have 7 health, because I get that ping, and then he gets his ambush, gets that first strike ability built in.
Yep.
So I'm taking out units and leaders that otherwise I may not be able to.
I love it. Sideboard looks kind of spicy. So we've got the 2 Bamboozle, which probably comes in during like the Vaders or some of the pilot decks. And then you've got a Shadowed Hover Tank. The 4 cost yellow Sentinel in space, or on, it's actually on ground, sorry.
Correct.
Tell me a little bit about that. Is that like, was that like a Sabine sideboard maybe for her flip turn?
Yeah, largely, I mean, Bamboozle fits a lot of matchups, but I'd say I'm usually looking to pull Bamboozle in and Tank in versus those early aggro and
Yep.
specifically Sabine decks. If they're going to drop that Saber on something, I want to be able to answer it one way or another. And the tank being a 5/3, if they drop Sabine, it's all 4 cost. I can potentially ping just for the fun of it in that round on her, but it's mostly if they don't do anything else, it can kill Sabine if she attacks. That 5 health bottom on her side. If they play the Saber, then Bool's there to bounce that back to the hand and exhaust her. We're racing. I mean,
Yep.
that's going to be the fight. We're both aggro, natured. It's a race. If I can eliminate the Sabine turn one way or another, it usually is going to get me ahead and I can win that match. So kind of just defaulting her to not doing anything or killing her that turn is a lot of that matchup is playing around that Sabine flip. So that's why they're both there. And there's certain matchups I run where having that tank enables other plays. So if I'm going into any of the 4, the like a Ray or a Han 1 matchup, or even Han 2,
Hmm.
if they have to slam into the 5/3 to do anything, now it puts me back in that space where I can drop versus a 5-cost leader, a Poe or a Plo, and I'm just pinging to kill it, and I could do other things.
Yep.
So that much damage makes them have to think about what they're doing and keeps me on my game plan of getting rid of their leader as fast as possible. Or they look at that and they're claiming, they're trying to play around it. Now I get to swing for 5 the next turn. So if I'm dropping that on 4 and they're moving on to the next turn, 5 points is a lot. I mean, that's a quarter of most decks. But a sixth or a fifth of any particular deck.
Yeah, depending on the base. But no doubt. And I could see that being like they have to swing one of their bigger units into that, and then you just still have Tarkentown available, so you could just use that to finish.
Tarkentown's out there. Red 5 becomes alive. Suddenly, Gorilla Soldier drops. They have to do a lot of math to figure out where things are going because. Are they putting on a base and now swinging? Are we trading? I mean, there's a lot of things that interplay with a lot of the cards in the deck.
I skipped over a card in the main board, Red 5, so makes sense when you're pinging units throughout the game.
Yeah, it kind of, in certain matchups, it becomes a built-in Tarkentown or gets things where Tarkentown can get at it. It builds on all the pings that are in the game. It enables trading that otherwise wouldn't exist. And it can very strongly control that space lane and give me a lot of reach and space with those attacks.
Yeah, that's a problem ship. Every time it comes on the board, I'm like, I gotta kill that thing. And we've got the other half of the sideboard, actually. So 2, the Bombing Run, which I'm going to just assume is more for that Vader matchup. And then the Change of Heart and the crates are spicy. Tell me about that.
When I was going to this weekend, this PQ, Vader 4 had been kind of on an upswing, and in local testing, there's a particular wedge player who's an excellent player and kind of made me really look at what I needed to do to maintain control of that space lane. So specifically, Vader 4, Bombing Run, it's not a guaranteed card to win that match, but it really helps to get rid of all their ships, and especially that clone, I forget the name of it right at the moment.
Clone Combat Squadron.
The 3/3. Yeah, that Clone Combat Squadron. If I can blank their board and kill that, that's usually going to be everything I need to maintain winning that game. And that's around when it becomes important, that 5 resource, 6 resource turn. So it's almost exclusively for that matchup. It's a lot to dedicate to a sideboard, but I expected large numbers of them, so I figured it was worthwhile. The rest of the board, they're the Change of Heart and Crate. That gives me play into decks like Han2, Data Vault, any late control matchup. You'd be surprised how many times dropping a crate versus an opponent not expecting it just insta wins the game at that point. I'm aggro in a lot of ways. If I'm going versus Kira, if I'm going versus Palp, Hantu, Cad Bane, they're going to drop their Cad unit that costs 7. They're going to drop their Devastator that costs 10. If I already have them at threat of lethal at that point, they're within that 8 to 10 range.
Should seal it up.
Suddenly, it changes everything they're doing. I mean, it's not perfect, obviously. There is play into a crate, but if a deck is not designed to have that Fell the Dragon or other removal to like relatively cleanly get rid of it, they don't have an answer. And if they're not winning that turn, that 10-point swing the next turn usually is going to be enough to finish the game. So it's my end game, get it a drill free answer to those particular matchups. And into those same matchups, Change of Heart can do similar plays. If they play that Avenger, if they play that Devastator, any flavor of Devastator really, some decks like to use a chain side, choose sides. It gives an ability for the next round to steal that big unit and get that big swing myself. Because often at that stage of the game, the 6-7 resource turn for me, I should have, versus a 30-point base, I should have 22, 23 points on their base by that point in time. So that just steals their answer to me and gives me that, that game-crushing last swing. So there are other times it gets used, but that's the main reason it's there. It's to get out of that situation where they've cleared my board, I don't have a Cassian, I don't have a Falcon, I don't have anything I can get out of the way, but I claim going to the next round, I steal their big answer that locked me down, and now they have to deal with it. And with the hand hate, that often means their hand's basically empty, and they may not have that answer.
No, it's great. I love the option to have a late game, answer to a lot of things and seal up the game. That's real cool. Love it. Well, thanks for breaking down the deck list.
I definitely run a more toolboxy version of QUINLAN, a lot of 2-ups and rather than 3-ups in spots. But that's kind of personal preference. It brings some things online, gives me options where other decks may not have it, and a lot of times it's a little bit of a surprise factor because I am not running the standard or close to the standard Quinlan list. So when I put some cards out there, it can often be oh, I was not prepared for that.
Right. No, it makes sense totally, and I'm very happy for you and your win with this deck. You know, like I said, some people had said maybe this deck was on a decline just because a lot of these, you know, data vault decks with more health have been succeeding, but you stuck with your gut, what you like to run, and you took the win. So, congrats, man.
Yeah, as a lot of people will say, you know, you listen to a lot of the, you know, the more coachy, you know, help your game people out there. They'll keep saying it. Play what you're comfortable with. Play what you have reps on. It doesn't help if you're playing the, you know, the quote unquote best deck in the meta if you don't know how to play into that meta. So if you have a deck that you're comfortable with, you know the ins and outs, you know how to play into that meta, and it's, you know, a capable deck, it's almost always going to be the right choice. And I've been on this deck all set 4 so far, so it seemed to be the most logical way for me to go going into the PQ.
Yep.
But I don't disagree. Those data vault decks, they got that 8 extra life on me. That can be a lot to overcome. When I finally face versus other, you know, an ECL or a Tarkentown deck, it feels so different because, you know, the game's over in minutes instead of, you know, all day long with some of those. Like a raid is almost always going to go to time, even with aggro. So yeah, so those points do add up. So it is a cost to playing the deck. The abilities of the Tarkentown still are very relevant to get me on my game.
Yeah, no doubt. And speaking of matchups, since we're on the topic, let's talk about some of the matchups throughout the day. So, what were some of the so maybe you had some matchups that you felt really good going into, but did you have any matchups that were really close or kind of on the sketchy side? Tell us about your day on the day.
Generally, I was somewhat advantageous in that I largely faced what would be considered meta decks throughout the day. I really didn't have much in the way of, you know, wild decks I haven't seen, you know, somebody trying to spike. The exception to that was Solo IG. I think that's how he says
Late Night Gaming.
But, Late Night Gaming. Great competitor, great guy. I've played. I think it's the first time him and I have actually played each other.
Okay.
But he's a staple at our PQs here in the Kissimmee, Orlando area.
Yep.
So he's a beast. He's usually on like a Sabine ECL type deck. This time around, he was on Luke ECL, and I want to say there are a lot of similarities to how Sabine and the Luke deck played in his particular case, but Sabine can be a tough matchup as it is, and him on that deck, it was a nightmare. Like, every turn we're looking at each other and we do like one thing, and it's aggro-ish versus aggro-ish, and we're trying to think around how to play around everything the opponent had, and he was like the boss fight of the day. He was number 1 in Swiss. I think his record was 6-0-1. It wasn't a draw at the end. He played it out, but it wound up going to time. I think that was versus Akira.
Interesting. On an aggro deck.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's what he faced. I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure it's versus Akira. And he was like the man to beat, being top in Swiss, and I managed to sneak into 8th place. I didn't think I really had a shot at it at the end of the day. I was going on to round 7. I was 4-2. Yeah, did my math. 4 or 5. Yeah, 4-2.
I did not know that.
X2 is rough. That's a tough way to get into these tournaments.
Yeah.
So I played it out. I was in 15th going into round 7. And looking at the math, how everything worked out, like pretty much everything that happened in round 7 had to happen the way it did for me to get in. Like, if there's if one person wins here, one person, you know, loses there who shouldn't have. If
the stars aligned.
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of things had to go right for me to squeeze into 8th place.
I mean, that just makes it feel even better knowing that you take a deck that you know is very good and most people still know is very relevant. But, you know, supposedly on some decline, you take this deck, you go through Swiss, you end up 4-2, and then you end up sneaking in the top cut, and then tell us about your top cut run.
Well, going back to the original question of like my matches for the day.
Yeah.
The Luke ECL that he was running was the hardest match of my day. That's not to say the matches were easy other than that, but it was just a whole other level playing versus him that, you know, on that particular day. My matches for the day started versus a Thrawn Datavolt. Was a very nice guy. I think he goes by Skinny. He's from South Florida. I think some people on my team know him. Let's go Skinny. He was rooting for me all day after I had won our initial game.
Sure.
So he stuck around and he wanted to see at least be able to say, hey, I lost to the winner. So that was great. Great guy. Really fun meeting him. After that, I played into what I expect to see more of, the Vader for yellow deck. Behind that was Akira. Then I faced up on solo on his ECL Luke. After that, I went into a Tarkentown QUINLAN mirror, followed by another Kira Datavolt, and last one of the day for Swiss was versus a Ray Datavolt. All solid competitors. As it turned out for the day, 3 of my matchups were against people who ultimately top 8'd. The 2 Kiras I faced, and solo on his Luke ECL. So going into the top cut, there were a lot of familiar faces for me, and that's how the stars aligned that day. Those people had to get there for my strength of schedule and everything to work out to get me there. And because I was 8th and solo was 1st, we started the day with that boss fight, that hardest match I had of the day. When we first played, I kind of surprised him by taking game 1 in Swiss, and it really kind of like shook up how his deck was going, and how his deck played. I had to really think hard about how I was going to change mine. What I didn't expect, and it was kind of a brilliant move on his part, was since I was so teched out to fight in space versus Vader 4, I actually dominated the space lane versus him. So he largely gave up the space lane to reinforce his ground and just to beat me there. I didn't know that. So round 2, I sideboarded my way to like stay relevant in space and kind of make sure he couldn't get Luke on a ship and that kind of mentality. And he absolutely destroyed me game 2 for that reason. I was playing one game, he was playing another. It was still competitive. I rarely got close, like 1 or 2 different plays, a misplay on his side, or a luck draw on my side. I could have still pulled that one off. Like I know, like I had him, in a tight spot. But because I started, focusing on that space lane, I wasn't ready for what he did. So he took game 2. Going into game 3, I realized he gave up that space lane. So I sideboarded out a lot of my space to be competitive with him on ground as much as I could. And the cards fell the way they did. He's an excellent pilot, and he was able to beat me pretty solidly that last round. So going after that, shook hands, talked, had a good conversation again. And we're like, well, I hope to see you again in the finals. Let's see each other in top 8. And it turned out that way. Round 1, it was the rematch.
So cool.
I think I had it was a long day though.
Yeah,
so
and at this point, you had some practice into it though. So like going into it, you're probably a little more confident now that you had already seen him in the Swiss round.
Confidence is a strong word because he beat me, and it's a matchup that's hard. I was a little bit more confident in the, at least I know the angles he's taking on his specific version. Plus, I got to see his deck list. You share the deck list in Top Cut, so I knew what he was working with entirely and where he might go with it. Knowing that he had to move away from the space lane the first time in Swiss, I anticipated that would probably be his move. I didn't like full on commit to abandoning the lane, but I definitely pulled back a lot of tools I had for competing there, expecting that fight on the ground.
Right.
The first match went, I don't know how to say it. It went better than expected for me. Like everything in my deck clicked. I got force throws when I needed him. I was able to take out his threats as he put him down. So it's kind of like a half step ahead, just the way the game played out that first round, and I was able to take it down. It was far from easy, but it was definitely my deck humming and his kind of just like a little cooled off from our previous match. But again, it's a long day.
Yep.
We were both making mistakes. We were both heavily considering every play we did, and every decision point in this game is important. So when you've been playing at that point like 10 hours 12 hours of SWU,
it's a long day.
It's a long day, and plus you got everybody circled around watching you. You want to win. There's that you want to like play aggressive sometimes, but you don't want to lose because you're too greedy, and you don't want to lose because you weren't greedy enough. So there's a lot of things that factor into that that single elimination best of 3.
Right, no doubt.
Game 2, he took an interesting line with a bounty card. I forget the name of it at the moment also, but the one where you put it on there, if it's on a unique unit, you can look through the top 10 cards of your deck.
Bounty Hunter's Quarry.
Yeah, Bounty Hunter's Quarry. I didn't, and he tried that one in in the first matches we played, and he was able to get like a 2-for-1 on me and put out 2 units I couldn't answer, and he really took the momentum away from me. This time though, he chose that strategy, but my first play of the game was in L3, and he looked at that and I could see it in his eyes, like, how am I going to get rid of this shielded 2/2?
Yep.
Because he heavily committed into that bounty. He like put 2 on it, and now we're looking at each other. Round 2, I play a Fang Fighter, get rid of one of those bounties, completely like throwing away what momentum he could have bought,
Yep.
and slowly but surely rolled that game to where I needed to be. And I did, but again, I love to call Poe math. You get a
Yep.
Poe on the board, you can blaster him, blaster, discard a card for 10 points. If there's already a blaster on him because you already did that, the next turn you can surprise strike.
Yeah.
And that's what, 11 points of damage
Yep.
coming that way. You add 2 for the blaster, it's 13 points. It's fast. When you're versus a 25 health base, that's 13 points is half of what they have. So
Yep.
if you've done anything, the game's over. If I'm going into it and they don't have a like standard answer for a Poe, and I can get any swing, that's usually gonna just drive it into my favor. I'll discard my hand, I'll blaster it out, get 10 points, take a card out of their hand, and really swing the game. So
Yeah, I guess his only clean answer to that would be like if he ECL'd his own Poe or Wrecker into him.
Yeah, but that game,
They only
it
get
just
that
wasn't
option once.
a viable option. Right. They only get that option once. He had ECL already in that game, so he didn't have it. Plus, even when they do that, I can play it the next round.
Yeah.
It opens up Plo. Plo can come in, and if I have coordinate, that's still a lot of damage from the same sources. It's not as much, obviously, without the discard, but it's still a lot of math coming at him very quickly. So, I mean, my brain was melting at every angle I knew he had on me, but I was able to take it out and win the day. And after that, I went into I went slightly favorable. I think Kira and QUINLAN, it was Kira Donovan was my next match. It was versus the person I played, one of the people I played on Kira during Swiss, so I kind of knew where they were going also. But that's a slightly favored match that I kind of know what I have to do to go into it, rather than trying to figure out a Luke ECL on the fly live. What are my lines? Where am I going? What is he doing?
I've also seen you play Kira at locals too. Like you're not unfamiliar with actually playing the deck too.
Correct.
Yeah.
Kira is probably my third most played deck.
Okay.
I love the deck. It's outstanding. I have to give a lot of props out there to Wu. If it wasn't for what he's doing with that deck, I don't think people are on it. But when we exchanged lists, I looked at it. I'm like, oh, this is the deck that Wu took to win regional. So I kind of knew everything in the deck that way because I had studied it. It was like 1 or 2 cards off, but it's basically, oh, this is Wu's deck plus or minus 1 card. So how I have to play into that was more road mapped than going into like the Luke ECL would have been.
Right.
So big shout out to Wu. Congratulations again on your regional victory.
Yep.
But that match again went a little bit more smoothly mentally because I knew what I had to do. Like, the game plan was in place going into it. And again, great competitor. I think that was versus, I don't know his real name off the top of my head, but his name on Melee is Riddler. Outstanding player, but my deck hummed. I got everything I needed when I needed it, and just never could get to his late game. Our first game was pretty close. He had options to get into it, but he just didn't draw what he needed. I got him into that like top deck empty hand mode, and was able to do that again the next round, to where his Pershing never gave him a chance to draw anything, controlled his hand as much as I could, and just started laying that damage as fast as I could into him before he could stabilize and get to that end game that is so feared in a Kira deck.
Yeah, was that 2-0? You got it?
Yep, that was 2-0. Both
Nice.
First round, second round of the finals. I'm sorry, of the top 8, I 2-0'd my opponents.
Awesome.
Last matchup was versus I think his name was, get this right.
Is this in the finals here?
Yeah, the finals. I think that's Marcos Lopez, I think, was the player. He was on Han to Dadavolt.
Yep.
That's a deck I'm very familiar with. Being on the Bothan Network, there are several players on our team who are kind of known for the Hantu Datavolt. Yep. Shout out to Colby and Crispy and Reflex. That's a deck they are very familiar with and are very innovative on. Yep. That being said, I know that deck very well for that reason, and I've played into it versus teammates. And when you're on the Bothan Network, we try and go by the idea that practice is harder than real life.
Right.
So going to those excellent players, knowing the deck as well as I did, it very much prepared me for that particular matchup, and I went in confident, but knowing there's play for them too to come at me. I think I'm
Sure.
favored there, but there's tricks that I need to be aware of, and I need to play straight. Otherwise, it can go bad very quickly. That match did go for 3 total games. I stuck to my game plan, which is largely denying them the advantage that they get off of being able to play things off curve because they come in damage. So the Tarkin Town, the Red 5, Force Throws all get a little bit better against them because they come in damaged if they're doing what they're trying to do. So it kind of kicks them off their game a little bit that way. And if my hand control comes, they're top decking. If I get them in top deck mode and I get a Poe out there, that deck doesn't have a whole lot of answers for a Poe, especially with an empty hand where they're drawing top. And that was definitely the biggest display of Poe math of the day, because I had gotten the Poe with a blaster into the next round surprise strike. Datavolt may have 33 points of damage of life on it, but in 2 turns, if I'm dropping 23 points off of just Poe, it makes that match fast, and that's not what they want to see.
Yeah.
So excellent.
All of a sudden, 33 health isn't enough.
Exactly. So, looking at the meta, there are a lot of decks that struggle in removing a Poe. So that's kind of why I leaned into it, because if he sticks, it usually is going to be my game win.
Yeah, no, he's definitely an auto kill on site for sure. No, awesome recap, man. That is, I just think coming out of Swiss, getting 8th and being placed 8th in the top cut is insane, and then coming up to win it is even crazier. Congrats on the win, man. Thanks for giving us a nice breakdown of your day and your deck. What's next for David? So what do we got coming up competitive-wise in Star Wars?
Well, as I've been fortunate enough to win this PQ, I'm not really traveling for any more planetary qualifiers. Definitely going to Galactics Worlds, whatever we're calling it, but definitely going to go to Galactics in Vegas. All that is planned out. Probably just some local stuff, hit some showdowns, just to keep it sharp that way.
Yeah.
But probably nothing major until Galactics. We have a local shop, which I think is a sponsor of yours, The Haven. I like to play there. They do a nice big pre-release midnight event, which draws 40, 50, 60 plus local players out to that. So that'll definitely be the next big thing I do, is the set 5 pre-release at midnight. After that, it's just going to be in the shop trying to figure out that set, trying to get everything set up for Worlds.
Awesome, man. And yeah, well, all the Orlando locals, we'll see you guys at Applebee's the night of the midnight release for the Haven.
Exactly.
Well, David, thanks for meeting with me today, man, and giving us a nice recap of your PQ win. Shout out to the Bothan Network. Shout out to all the locals in Orlando who have been supporting the community. And guys, if you enjoyed the video, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
He's a sweet